Holmes, I think we should be at the meeting of the neighbors. They have hired us, and we could obtain information from their statements. Watching the houses is the job of the police.
I want the police to advise them, and our job, Watson, is not to watch. I want to investigate Captain Moore's house.
Poor man. He just arrived, and he is the first one to be robbed. They stole a box of valuable paintings. Practically only 2 neighbors on this street have not been robbed. Thank God no one has been attacked. Why do you want to search that house again? I find it strange that being the last house on the street and being in that elevated position, no neighbor noticed the thief leaving the place.
Watson, before Captain Moore arrived on this street, there were no robberies. Look at the house, on top of the hill, windows facing the street. From that position he can watch the whole neighborhood. He happens to have his telescope pointed towards the street, not towards the stars. No neighbor saw the captain's things, only the boxes he brought when he moved. And above all, Watson, remember that when we entered the boxes were closed. How did the thief know that there were paintings and in which one they were, if they existed? Let's find a place to wait for the neighbors to be gathered.
There is the captain. He leaves his house. That place looks like the Parthenon on top of the Acropolis. How will we get into the house?
Trust me, Watson, that won't be a problem. We're already inside. Look for anything abnormal, things piled up. We have to check the closed boxes. You made me think by mentioning the Parthenon. You know that it is not an original temple, it is a copy. Its construction poses a mystery and an unknown hypothesis.
These boxes are empty, and there is practically no furniture. It turns out that the captain is the thief. What is your hypothesis about the Parthenon?
Keep looking, Watson, we don't have much time. Regarding the Parthenon, we know that it is a rectangular temple. The Greeks dedicated it to the goddess Athena, whom they consider the protector of the city, but it is an atypical shape. All pagan peoples throughout the world built pyramidal temples in high places in a conception that the gods they worshipped were in the sky, and to get closer they looked for mountains that in a certain way extended the pyramids to be closer to the deity. Look at the Egyptian pyramids that, although they are mausoleums, are dedicated not only to the pharaohs but to the deities that the Egyptians worshipped. Also the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, and the temples of the Mayans, Aztecs or Nahuatl were pyramidal. In the minds of all the great polytheistic peoples, the way to approach their idols involved the effort of personal advancement. Quite the opposite occurs with the temple of the god of the Hebrews.
Holmes, there is a locked door here. I cannot open it. Can you tell me how you opened the one in the house, and explain to me why the Jewish temple broke the style of the temples in the region? They lived in both Mesopotamia and Egypt. Was it just to be contrary?
Excellent, Watson. Look at the many footprints covered in coal that lead from this door. This door will take us to the coal cellar. There is a lamp there. Would you be so kind as to light it? No, Watson, it was not to be contrary. Remember that the Hebrews were a people of nomadic shepherds, Bedouins without land of their own. They were more like tribes, not an organized people. The descendants of Abraham became a people when they were freed from slavery in Egypt by God. That is precisely where the difference comes from. These people were used to living in tents made of animal skins. For them, that was normal. When Moses transmitted to the people the instructions that God had given him, one of those orders was to make a tabernacle, that is, a tent of skins for the presence of God to reside in. The things that were put there, the Ark of the Covenant, the 7-branched lamp, the altar of bread, everything was designed by divine order, not by human order. I believe that no people would have dared to make a tent for their God and put it in the middle of the people. And above all, there were no images. The Greeks, with their prodigious sculptural school, created images of their gods with extraordinary anatomical perfection. They made gods in the image of man, whereas the Hebrews knew that man was created in the image of God, and that is why God forbade them images, so that they would not fall into the temptation of attributing human defects to God or wanting to represent him with animals, irrational beasts after all. That is precisely the secret. The other peoples sought to reach God, but it was God who chose the Hebrews to fulfill his promise of the Messiah, Savior of all humanity. It was God who on personal initiative descended and wanted to dwell among men, even though the chosen people did not accept or believe him. Remember that those who were rescued from slavery in Egypt did not enter the promised land because they did not want to obey him. To consummate his plan, God wanted to teach a people who would listen to him, understand him and obey him, something that this people has rarely done. But returning to the point, this tabernacle was rectangular, 10 meters by 20. There only the priest could enter to offer the bread and light the lamps. Note that curiously God communicated with his chosen people through prophets rather than through the priests who entered the tabernacle.
Holmes, look at those boxes. Here are the stolen things. The thief enters the coal shed and hides the things here. No one saw him enter or leave the neighborhood, but look, the padlock is on the inside and is closed. He could not enter from the outside unless someone opened the gate for him or left it open. Does he have an accomplice?
No, Watson, our friend is smarter. Look at this bolt at the base of the door. If I open it, the door slides upwards on a rail. The doors of the coal shed never open. The other day when we were checking the houses, I noticed that this coal shed also has a padlock on the outside. The purpose of those padlocks is to prevent anyone from entering to steal the loot. Now that I think about it, if this bolt is open, it means that he plans to enter through the coal shed door again. That means that there will be another robbery today. Let's go out and notify the police to catch him red-handed. Lock the door, then he won't be able to get in. Let's go out, Watson. We must wait for Captain Moore.
Holmes, you spoke of the Jewish tabernacle, but we were talking about the Parthenon.
Remember that shortly before the year 1000 BC, King David decided to build a temple for God so that he would no longer be in a leather tent, but it was his son Solomon who completed the project around those years. It was beautiful, splendid, ostentatious, I would say, a true wonder that the eyes of the people and foreigners had no access to. Only the priests entered, but it could be seen from the outside. The Temple of Athena, the Parthenon, was built around the year 447 to 438 BC. It was a little larger, but it is in the same proportion, practically twice as long as it is wide. Remember that before Christ, time goes from more to less. The first temple of Jerusalem was destroyed after the capture of the city by Nebuchadnezzar or Nebuchadnezzar in the year 587 BC. This means that it was destroyed before the construction of the Temple of Athena, which was started by order of Pericles in 447 BC. The famous sculptor Phileas was its designer, and it was completed in 438 BC. My hypothesis is that the Greeks copied the model they saw from afar, or perhaps they entered during the destruction of Jerusalem. At least they saw the foundations. Watson 8.
The theory is bold. Many consider the Greeks to be the most intellectually developed people of antiquity. They wrote music for the first time, mathematics, philosophy, their beautiful sculptural treasure, the creation of the Republic. To a large extent, our Western world is governed by these Greek inventions. On the other hand, the Jews were a people who hid their knowledge about God and their scriptures. They were exclusive with other peoples, and the Greeks did not abandon their pagan polytheism, nor did they incorporate the ethical laws of the Jews.
Watson, the Hebrews are at least 1,500 years older than the Greeks. I do not dispute the knowledge of the Greeks, especially in mathematics, sculpture and music. As for philosophy, I confess that I prefer the books of Solomon to Plato's dialogues. Philosophy serves to clarify many things, but they are human opinions that change tomorrow, which should not be tested. On the other hand, the Proverbs of Solomon are true ethical advice, expressed by a loving father who seeks the good of his son. The book of Job is also a treatise on suffering and the reason for human misfortune, where both then and today God is blamed for all misfortunes. Ignoring our faults, the greatness of the Hellenic Empire is due to Alexander the Great, who defeated the Persians, who had conquered its territory and large areas and peoples in both Eurasia and Africa. However, the Greeks did not know how to live together among themselves, and the fights between leaders and city-states weakened it, and it was easy bait for the Romans, who inherited their territories and wealth as the Greeks appropriated the conquests of the Persians, who in turn inherited them from the Babylonians and these from the Assyrians. Watson, I am not saying that the Greeks copied everything. It was not convenient for them to copy the ethics and morals ordered by God to the Hebrews, because they would have had to have recognized that their conduct was very much the opposite of what God orders, and trying to change that is not very popular. If you look at the behavior of the Greek gods as written by Homer, it seems more like a Mexican soap opera full of intrigue, murder, abuse of power by the gods over mortals, adultery, rape, in other words, all the capital sins. In the writings of the Hebrews, the great miracles of the Exodus are highlighted, as well as the need for this law of God to be taught from childhood to every citizen of the country, national or foreign. The Decalogue that God gave to Moses is a law of preservation and rights for all citizens without distinction of sex, age or position, and that is something unthinkable when society is led by the strongest, whether militarily or politically. But look at another similarity in their beliefs. Let's talk about Aesculapius or Asclepios, the Greek god of medicine. It is spoken of for the first time in the 6th century BC, and it mentions two snakes that were fighting violently. Then Asclepios threw his staff, and with that they separated and coiled around this rod of Asclepios, but in peace. This recalls the passage in the Bible when a plague of vipers attacked the Hebrews in the desert on their way to the promised land because they did not obey God. Many died, and God ordered Moses to make a snake coiled around a pole, all in bronze. Note that Moses was around 1,500 years before Christ, and the legend of Asclepios in the 6th century. The ancient Greek town Watson was ephemeral. Athenian democracy extended from around the 6th century, 508 BC, and was destroyed about 300 years before Christ by Xerxes, who tore down the Temple of Athena and was never restored. They left their knowledge and culture to the world, which was absorbed by the gigantic Roman Empire, and that is why in our society certain principles of Greek culture are still part of our life. On the other hand, the knowledge of the Jews was hidden from the world until after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, who sent his disciples to baptize all nations, teaching them to keep everything that he had ordered. This included the Decalogue of Moses.
Look, Holmes, Captain Moore was caught red-handed. You were absolutely right.
Excellent, but I doubt very much that he is a captain or his name is Moore.